welcome to another edition. It's the Thanksgiving edition of This Is Whole Life.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Ken sounds like he could use a little extra on that one.
Happy Thanksgiving.
That's a better one. Melanie?
Happy Thanksgiving, although there's no food, there's no coffee. I don't know. It doesn't feel like this is the Thanksgiving edition.
There's beans in a bag at the end, but it wasn't early enough to
Not the same thing.
All right, guys, this is audio. They don't know what's in front of us. This is where you get with the radio and just pretend like there's stuff here.
We have microphone stands that are breaking a plastic table.
And
we
Randy,
have
just you hear
gluten-free
that?
stuffing. That's, there we go. And
Gluten-free stuffing.
This is the sound of medium roast chocolate caramel praline coffee beans.
From Mexico.
Wow. And I'm not even making that up. We actually have that.
Yeah, no. And we have tissues. We have Ken, Melanie, and Randy. Lucas is in New York City.
Yeah.
Bum.
Yeah.
Bum.
Huh.
How about that? I'm like wearing that big, thick jacket. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, I just got back from San Diego, and I still had to pull out my jacket. I had to dig in my boxes and find a coat to take with me. Everybody else is like, "Ooh, sunny San Diego," and I'm like,
I feel a little disappointed. I feel
freezing.
like I'm the only person around here who hasn't gone anywhere because, Randy, you were gone last week, too.
Well, I was just here in Florida. I didn't go anywhere other than out into the back roads and the byways of Florida to put some miles on the Harley-Davidson with my dad and my brother, which was an exceptional week weather-wise. Except that on the last day, alas, we were stranded, second to last day, stranded in the very end of our ride because my bike left us stranded. Small electrical issue that, but I think I also burned up a battery. So it was a rescue, go get the truck and trailer mission, and it now sits in my garage until I have time to fix it.
Wow.
But otherwise, it was pretty uneventful, which is always good. Got to go. If any of you all here know Jim Boyle, he's a good friend of mine, and Jim came out and rode with us on his trike. He has a Harley Tri-Glide.
Did he do that one day, or did he do it multiple days?
Just one day. One day.
Okay, I talked to him after that one day.
Oh, did you?
He loved it. He was so happy.
Yeah, we had a really nice time, and
glad the weather cooperated this time.
I know, right?
You had perfect weather.
Perfect weather. It was a little bit, we had gloves and jackets on for the second half of the week, but no complaints. So there's no doubt that Thanksgiving is my absolute favorite time of the year. And when I think Thanksgiving, I think gratitude. And Johannes Gettner was a German author born back in the early 1900s, said to speak gratitude is courteous and pleasant. To enact gratitude is generous and noble, but to live gratitude is to touch heaven. So I really...
Wow, Randy, that was...
One of my favorite
pretty
quotes
profound
for this time of year.
Yeah, nice.
It's one I like to put on the table and let people think about while we're doing that.
Oh, it's very nice.
You know someone else who was really grateful?
Tell me.
Belshazzar. Or no, wait a minute. No.
We're about a week behind there, Randy. I know you've been on vacation, so it's okay.
Welcome back.
I was grateful, I should say. I was grateful for Belshazzar. And I was grateful for Stevie willing to take on the role and follow two pretty awesome kings in the Nebi and
all of our kings were amazing.
They were
Our
great.
kings
Yes.
were.
And then,
Darius this last week, fantastic.
And Darius again with the WWE themed intro music sounded like Undertaker kind of music.
Yeah, actually, we were going for Empire Strikes Back.
Were you? Okay,
feel.
well,
yeah, Darius was imposing.
And then we had a little Austin Powers nod with the cat.
Yes.
That was nice. So
Persian kitties.
And when you think of those things, it just always brings me back to just like someone in that position would want it to be. All about them, all about all of the eyes on them. But yeah, congrats to all of our kings who really made this series more fun and more just
brought it to life.
More flavor. Brought it to life. It's a good one. And of course, Titus, congratulations. Yes. I was like, Ken acquiesced at the end, and he put in Manny Pacquiao for that quote.
The final quote.
And what was that final quote? Do you remember? I didn't write it down.
The final quote was basically, I am the same person all the time.
I have no secrets.
I have no secrets.
No secrets. I'm the same person all the time. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I didn't look up his... I don't know that much about him, but you're welcome, Titus, from Ken.
Yeah,
that was good. Darius the Mede. I think I knew this. But to think about like who Daniel had been, he gets he gets the new king after Belshazzar, and I can't help it. That was a great message, and I haven't even had a chance to listen to the podcast yet, so I didn't hear what you guys talked about afterwards. But I'm like, man,
maybe it's for the best.
Maybe just skip a week, Randy.
Skip a week.
It's okay.
No,
it's never as good without you, Randy.
We did our best.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it was amazing, but leading into that, I watched actually both this morning, getting prepared for today, and all that Daniel goes through, and then he ends up with. I almost feel like when Darius makes him the second in charge. Darius seems to be an okay guy, but he had to know also that it's like, because Ken nailed it. He's like, well, that foreign guy, he's going to be the new guy, and he's also going to be your bosses because, he's just that awesome and you're not. It's just it's hard to think about that in any other way. And I'm like, you just can kind of feel it like setting in your heart right away, like, oh man, there's no possible way, even if you don't know the story, that this could possibly go wrong. And Ken is always so kind when he's talking about politics. He was straightforward though. Politics has always been, it still is, it's always going to be. But he called the governor's dirt digging campaign opposition research.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm like, there's only one way to apply that, and that, of course, is the ever popular smear campaign. So I was like, but opposition research. And I'm like, that is absolutely genius. So good call, opposition research. Ken's trying to make sure everyone feels like we really can get along if we would just, see things just a little bit differently. Not smear campaign, opposition research.
Is that what you were doing, Ken?
I think so.
I did not coin the term, Randy.
It felt like it was yours. It felt like a Kenism.
You owned it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There we go.
Yeah, that's for sure. So it always made me wonder how, when you get to this story, because Darius seems like overall a pretty good idea. Or pretty good idea. Darius seems like a pretty good guy.
Okay.
But then for these opposition research people to come up with something, I mean, this was sneaky. This was top shelf. This was perfect to be like, look, because it seems at first like it's narcissism, right?
Yeah.
Oh, great king. Man, why should anybody pray to any god? I mean, we have all these different gods, and we got Daniel's god over here. We got all these gods, but really, should anyone be praying to anybody else but you for 30 days? For the longest time, I've just always thought of it as, you're right. How come I didn't think of that? I mean, I am that good. So how come I didn't think of having this like written in law a long time ago? And furthermore, maybe we should do this like every other month, or maybe once a year, like Thanksgiving, that you have me here to be your king. And that's kind of always how I've thought about it. But you came up with this, and where did you find this, or where was this? Was that one of the commentaries that you mentioned, that you found this other idea that maybe it was it'd be a uniter?
One of the commentaries that I have, and I'm blanking on, I think it's the NASB or something. Anyway, one of the commentaries that I have cited a scholar that posited that this was more about uniting religions than it was about Darius being on an ego trip. And I thought it was an interesting theory because the Persians actually weren't known for emperor worship. That wasn't really a thing that they were known for. In fact, they were very much known for their religious tolerance. And so for me, that's why that theory for me works well.
It feels
on
good.
This one is that it felt like it would make sense that, okay, say your prayers to the emperor and he will take all the different gods and distribute them accordingly. But we're going through one place because there's one central power that we're uniting behind now that now that we've moved on from the Babylonian rule, we're now moving into the rule of the Medes and Persians. let's go ahead and do this as a unity thing. It also, to me, explains a little bit why it was only a 30-day thing. It wasn't going to be a year long or for
sense.
For as long as he rules. So that's what appealed to me about that.
Well, it really, because then the part that never seemed to fit was here you have, or at least for me, had this idea that Darius was just like, heck yeah, praying to the king. But then as soon as the opposition research team comes back from their dark ops and they're like, hey, wait a minute, Daniel, he's not playing ball. And then the king is clearly distraught, and that doesn't seem to match with someone who's just like wanting all the praise or all the glory for himself. But why doesn't Daniel compromise? Or would it have been okay if he compromised and just said, look, I'm not going to stop praying, but I'm also not going to the window where I know that these guys have got it out for me, because clearly I'm going to be caught. So would it have been okay if he was just like, yeah, I'm still praying to God. I haven't changed my heart.
Doesn't matter whether you're praying on your knees or which direction you're praying, really, right?
I don't think so.
What do you think, Melanie?
I would say
she always looks so surprised. There's a microphone in front of her, and I turn to her and ask her questions, and she always looks like, why are you asking me? It's like I walked into her office and just shoved a microphone in her face or something.
It's because most of the time I know that I probably shouldn't say anything.
I don't know why she says that.
Okay, so I will say this.
Okay.
I think it is up to the prayer, the person praying.
Yeah.
Because I think context matters. I think relationship matters. I
knew you were going to say that. Relationship matters.
There you go.
I think the other point that has to be taken into account is you think, okay, if you took my life and you took, I've told more than a few stories from my life from up front during sermons and things like that. If you're compiling 6 chapters in the Bible out of stories of my life, why do you pick the stories that you pick? Why do you choose to tell those stories? And so what was the author of the book of Daniel trying to point out with this story? Why was it important to him that Daniel did pray the way that he prayed? Why was it important that he followed through on his normal routine? One could say that maybe one of the points that was trying to be made is, do you have secrets? In the words of man, do you have secrets? Are there things that what are you willing to stand up for? What are you willing to say, look, I know I could hide this, but there are times where I'm just not going to. I'm going to be upfront very much about what's going on. And for him in this particular case, I think when I look at the story, for Daniel to have closed the windows, to have not done it, for him would have been a denial of who he was and what was important to him, because he did this every day. This was his routine every day, 3 times a day. He does this. So if he doesn't do it publicly like he has been, then his neighbors think, well, maybe he is doing what the king's asked. Maybe he is not. Maybe he is submitting his prayers only to the king. Maybe he's only praying to him. And for the writer of Daniel and for me, Daniel did not want that. He wanted to be upfront, and this is who I am. I'm consistent.
So,
in the context of the intended readership, people who are spread out. We talked about this kind of all along. People who are spread out, and they're not at home, and they don't have their regular central worship. They needed a hero. And Daniel emerges as that hero. This is somebody that they can look to who, does the thing that they know is going to be his undoing, and yet he emerges victorious.
So was there, other than I guess I don't know, I'm not going to say that. Was there a cultural significance for Daniel doing this at the window, going to pray, or was this just his personal ritual that was just important to him because, it feels good when I pray by the window. It feels good when, is this window facing Jerusalem? Is it facing east, or north, or is there any other reason for this other than just that, or do we know?
The idea is the direction he was praying was towards the temple in Jerusalem.
Towards the temple. Yeah. Okay. So nothing other than, so it wasn't like something that, would everyone do this? Would Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and maybe some others, would they pray this way, do you think? Or is this just so this wouldn't be
it would not be unheard of.
Out of the norm.
No.
Okay. Because that was kind of
because the temple is the one place on earth that God's presence in a Jewish mind visibly resided, and therefore when you prayed, you oriented yourself towards. It's kind of like how some people today will look up towards heaven when they pray, or whatever. It's you're looking up towards where you believe your prayers are going.
The other part that, maybe going through Belshazzar 2 weeks ago and then coming to Darius, it's not Babylon, or it's the Medes, they take down Belshazzar and they take over Babylon. And it's really kind of, I'm not sure I always stop and think about the succession of kings, and then it's actually a whole different culture that comes in and takes over. But maybe that's the thing that I've been thinking about the most was, like, Daniel had to be pretty amazing to not only have multiple kings be like, yeah, you're the guy. And of course he's interpreting dreams. He's doing all these things. Not that he's giving Belshazzar great news, and even though he didn't take the news seriously, but it just keeps coming back to, like, they don't just tolerate him for what they can get from him. They genuinely like him. They put him in charge. They want things to go well, and they're like, Daniel's my guy. And so I guess I've never stopped and thought about how all the things that Daniel did, and then it's like, well, I wish we knew more about Daniel and about all the things that he did, or that put him in a place that makes that many different people count on you. How many, that's a lot of high-ranking, powerful people that are like, yep, can't get along without Daniel.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Just to stop and think about it.
Daniel has 9 lives.
Is that this week? Is he like?
No, I'm just saying,
This week, 9 lives. I'm like,
Turns out we're going to do a 7-part
bonus.
Melanie will be preaching that one.
Oh, man, you had me there for a second.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, 9 lives? Could be more?
But I will tell you, though, that you sometimes see this in government. You'll see people who are so good at their job, it doesn't matter who's in office, that administration wants to utilize that person because they have so much expertise in something. There are just certain people that they don't necessarily align themselves with a political party.
Right.
It's more of an expertise in a certain particular area, and so multiple administrations will find them useful and keep them on
both sides.
The old saying, "Good help is hard to find." So,
and once you find Daniel, lock him down.
Right.
Even if he gives you bad news.
Yeah.
Right, Belshazzar? He's not listening. So,
nor has he been for a while.
Nor has he been. Which week did we get into Nabonidus? Was that in Belshazzar?
Yeah.
Dang it. Okay, that was good though. That was the cylinder.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was cool. See, and I missed it. So
we can go back and do the episode over.
Yeah, I think.
No, I don't want to do it over. But I was like, I didn't know what I had missed, and so I was just going back, and I was like, that was really. And I know we talked about him the week prior, just a little look ahead. So this has just been all the way through a really, really fun series. Now, so when you get to the point where this seems like maybe the first time we maybe think about the concept of the separation of church and state when it comes to this decree. And, for any good Adventist that grew up when we did and probably earlier, it always seems to come back to the idea of, someday our right to worship as we see fit by anyone will be compromised to something. And then, I guess there's always disagreement about what that might be from certain sides or certain denominations. But when you think about what Daniel put himself against, and when you look at it, thinking about those things, and like, man, it would be way easier to keep the window closed or not go to church on this day or not do that.
Well, you know what's interesting, Randy? Sorry, I cut you off.
Go.
What's interesting is, we tend to think, when I was 10, I read Fox's Book of Martyrs, which my parents probably shouldn't have let me do, but I did it.
Wow.
Some good reading at 10.
10. Wow.
I think that's about the age I was reading it too.
No wonder we were all
traumatized. It was in our elementary school library, because what's better for young kids
exactly
in second and third grade than to be reading through.
But you read these stories of these heroes who are, take me to the lion's den. I have this gigantic faith, and here it's all built up to this one great big moment where I'm going to prove my loyalty to God and then make this gigantic sacrifice. But I think that for a lot of us, when it comes down to it, there are smaller issues that we have to face that make a difference. It's not one great big decision that we make. It's standing up for justice in when the sacrifices are small, that works us up to being able to make larger sacrifices. And honestly, I feel like there are a lot of us who've been praying with our windows closed all along. And at some point, we're going to have to open up the windows and actually let our prayers be heard.
I don't want to get to the questions yet, but there was one that fits right here that I think we should go to. Anonymous said, will we be faced with some of these same choices and challenges that Daniel and his friends had to face in our future? And T. Cinco, you're always right on time, responded with, sadly, I think this happens regularly in countries without religious freedom, already that we see. And you see some of the challenges and the things that, Christians face other places that aren't totally unlike what happened here, being persecuted for their beliefs. So maybe it's not, it's not too much to think that, I know we like to think of it as just, it's not happening in America, so it doesn't really happen. When it's like we're just a small portion.
I think that's such a good point. And I think that as Americans, we tend to be a little bit insulated from some of the realities that are happening around the world of people who are suffering persecution. And my good friend Doug Hart, who's the lead pastor at the Markham Woods Church, often when we have conversations, Doug has spent time in those kind of countries, around people who are in those kind of countries. And it is remarkable what people go through. And it is interesting that in some cases people do pray with their windows closed, and in some cases they pray with their windows open. And it does seem to be one of those personal decisions, because you can find examples in the Bible where Jesus doesn't do some things because his time has not yet come, he says, and then there are other times where he does do things. And so it really is a matter of having a relationship with the Holy Spirit. But I do want to go back to what Melanie said a little bit earlier. I think here in the United States, we don't at this point have maybe some of the kind of issues that we tend to think of as big time issues, and yet we do have things that we can be making decisions for what's right and what's wrong. And I think that maybe one of the concerns that I sometimes have with Seventh-day Adventist theology is that we've built up this idea about a particular way things are going to happen at the end of time, and we've made it so specific that people don't worry about some of the other things that I think are compromising as well, and that as long as I keep the Sabbath, it doesn't necessarily matter if I choose to not treat people well, if I choose to be unjust in the way that I go about living life.
Yeah.
As long as I'm keeping the Sabbath, I don't have to worry about that mark of the beast. or whatever it is there. And I don't want to take anything away from the Sabbath, but I do want to remind people that Jesus said the greatest commandment was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And the second was like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. And so and he said, if you break one of the commandments, you're breaking all of the commandments. And so it occurs to me that if we aren't loving our neighbors around us well, and keep in mind that word neighbor, remember who the neighbor was in the Good Samaritan. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the fellow Jewish person. It wasn't the Samaritan being kind to other Samaritans. It was the neighbor was the person who is not like you. It is the foreigner. It is the person who is not like you, and showing them kindness and mercy. That is a incredibly important part of Christianity and being Christian and being a follower of God. And I think, like I said, I worry that sometimes we become so obsessed with keeping the letter of the law that we miss out on the spirit of the law, which is more important. And that is that we really remember what is behind all of this, that we don't love God well when we're not loving the people around us well. And if we're not loving the people around us well, we're not keeping the commandments, no matter what we want to say. No, I don't lie. Well, you're lying to yourself about your relationship with God if you think you can be awful to the people around you. And so I think this is just something important for us to think about, because, like I said, I think we sometimes want that big test. We think that that's what it comes down to, and yet I think maybe that we have other tests that are in each one of our individual lives that are giving us the opportunity to grow our characters and to grow up into into God's likeness. And we miss out on those opportunities for growth when we don't think about it, and we just simply look at 10 very rigid rules, as opposed to what is behind those rules. And again, I'm not saying, of course, don't murder. Of course, don't lie.
Please.
Of course, keep the Sabbath. Of course, have no other gods.
Yeah.
But think deeply about that, and don't make it narrow.
Well, in the first time that was actually explained like that, at least in a way that I understood it and was able to internalize it, it occurred to me personally that maybe the big test would be easier than me, because I was like, well, which one do I think I'm going to fare better in? Because I know myself, and biases and prejudices and things that you grow up with, and you try to decide who you're going to be, and then who you're going to be or who you'd like to be. And when you realize that who you are and who you'd like to be are often two people that are very far apart, and realizing that it's, love God and love your neighbor, and you're like, okay, I think I can love God. I'm doing pretty good. But then the neighbor, and then when you figure out that that's, not the neighbor that comes and brings you things when you're sick. It's not the neighbor that, hey, I picked up your trash can because it was out in the street and brought it up to your house. Or
that's the neighbor that knocked your trash can into the street.
That was the neighbors that cut down half the stuff on your side of the lot line kind of neighbors. And you're just like, oh man, how do you love that? And the difficulty with which I think most of us just, I don't think it's easy for anyone. So sometimes I wonder if it's not just like, well, maybe the big thing would just be like, bring that one on. Let's not do this other part, because maybe that would be easier.
Well, it's really interesting, I think, because I think we imagine that we will have some kind of, internal moral fortitude to stand up for the big things. And yet right now we're worried about offending people. So at what point does it go from, I don't care about offending you, in fact, I will stand up to you, from, wow, I don't want to say anything that would make anybody upset. And to be fair, we talk about persecution in other places, and there are populations right here in the United States of people who are persecuted. I think about, the LGBTQ community. This just in the last, year or so, 22 pieces of legislation have been introduced to try to remove rights from LGBTQ people just right here in Florida. And I think saying we love our neighbor, but we do it from over here, and we try to do it in a way that won't offend anyone. I think that really, I think we become complicit in someone else's lack of love for their neighbor if we're silent, because silence is complicity.
And it's really hard if you're one of those people that operate and live within a community that is marginalized, and people are afraid of saying the wrong thing, because I feel like in society now, people are afraid they're not going to get a second chance to say it right. So if it's not being received, and it's hard to speak your heart, or at least the questions that, is there something that I could do, that I should do, that I don't know I should do, or how do I approach this part of whatever that community is that you aren't sure of? People will tell me that all the time. Like, they want to ask questions about Emily, and it's like, I don't feel like I can ask, because I feel like you'll think that I'm being rude, or that and I'm like, well, and I know that's not the same for everyone. That's just one example. I'm like, I'd just rather have you ask the question poorly.
Exactly.
And I'm okay with that. But I also know that there are families in our community that aren't okay with that. They haven't gotten to a point in their own walk with this community, and like the realization that, you don't have a choice. You're here. This is ongoing. It's not going anywhere. It's not curable. It's not, it's all of those things. And it feels heavy. And for someone to ask a question incorrectly is like a huge deal to some people. And so I understand
but it's also a learning experience, though.
Right.
Because if I ask the question the wrong way, and someone says, you asked that question the wrong way, I've learned how to not ask that question. And so it's moving a little bit of a step toward asking the right questions and the right way, and saying, I think that, I think sometimes when we try to be allies and we screw up, we think, oh well, I can't do anything now. Or if you try to be an ally with someone who is then, hostile toward you, there's this tendency to, well, fine, withdraw. But the point is, if we are going to love people, then we're going to make mistakes in the way that we try to love people. But the important thing is that we try, and then when we are corrected, we try differently the next time. That doesn't mean stop. It means keep going. I mean, I love Emily. Yeah. So if I come and ask you a question and you're like, oh my goodness, why did you use that term, or why did you, or whatever, like, you're going to tell me, because you know what my heart is in that direction.
But you could get correction from 3 different people and be wrong in all 3. And so you also have to be prepared for that, because even just, we spent a weekend with the Down Syndrome Foundation camping a couple weekends ago in the rain. And as you see people at different stages, and it's heartbreaking to see the newbies, because they're just like, we don't know what to do. Or, we're just trying to engage. Their kids might be older, but they just don't feel like they've found a place that they can be comfortable to fit in. And it's hard when you can't even fit in. And this is the other part that I think we assume that everybody that's in a community, a marginalized community, are in the same place, or that they're comfortable in their community. And there are so many people that are just like, I don't want to be here. I don't like it here. This isn't what I want. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't, whatever. And you have a hard time. And so even then, in people that should be quote unquote safe, because we all kind of know the answers, right? We kind of, or at least probably closer than those that are outside. So, but you're right. Being complicit by saying nothing does more harm, I think, than having to say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, I promise to do better next time. If I can't,
Yeah, no demographic is monolithic, right? So,
right, yeah.
I can't speak for all women. Ken can't speak for all redheads. We
asked you a lot.
I mean,
we put
I don't
you in
know.
that
Ken
place
looks
here.
like maybe there's a possibility he could. But so yeah, we have to be careful how we, that we don't just generalize people and stereotype people into a particular way. I was about to say something else, and the train just totally went off the tracks.
I thought I saw you. I thought there was one more stop before we got to the station.
There was supposed to be.
So I was just waiting to make sure. But, the way that Ken, through this whole message and thinking of dominion and who has the power and keep going back to that. And, at the end, he said, you can decide for yourself, but Ken laid out that, the kings were the protagonists. Daniel is the wise guide, which I really loved. Advisors were the antagonist, and there might be some times when Daniel might have taken, that role, different pieces and parts. Fun to think about. But God is the hero. Like figuring out at the end that he's a living God, he will endure forever, and God wins every time, and you can count on it. And that's the part where, even if it's difficult or we're going like, man, I would rather be doing anything than this, or you're in that spot where you have to do something that you really don't want to do, and it's like, well, God wins, so let's put a win in my column today too, God, right? Or just don't leave. Just don't leave me while I take the L and then have to make up for whatever it is that I did that I wasn't supposed to or did it the wrong way.
Well, and it might just be an episode in the whole story. So maybe just wait till the next chapter and see how that one goes down.
I like optimistic Melanie. I do.
Did you give her some coffee before?
No,
But I'm sitting next to the beans,
bag.
so this is what's making me feel optimistic. I feel optimism.
Smell it through the vent in the back. So she's thinking
so
about once
good,
we're done
too.
here. Well, we had a teaser question that we didn't really get to that Stanley put in at the very end of second service. And this was from someone anonymous that said, throughout this series, the theme of dominion has been the central focus in the book of Daniel. However, the series is being concluded at the end of chapter 6. Meanwhile, chapters 7 through 12 introduce prophetic visions and apocalyptic imagery that seem to explore new ideas. How do these two sections intersect, and what insights can be gleaned from their relationship regarding dominion?
I think the stories in the first 6 chapters are the foundation for what's going to be happening in the final 6 chapters. They're the background. They're the setting up that Daniel is an advisor to kings, and now he's about to have his own visions himself. Some of them are going to bother him a lot. But again, God can be trusted through these visions to tell what's going to happen in the future, and they're there to give faith in what's to come. And so I thought it would probably be fun next year to do a kind of small group Bible studies for those who are interested in exploring the last 6 chapters of Daniel, as well as some of the book of Revelation, some of the prophecy there, and probably calling it something along the lines of Jesus and the apocalyptic vision, or something along those lines, and doing that. So.
These are like study guides that we're gonna, or
yeah, I think I think it's gonna be a lot more conversation based rather than preaching at you. I think that sometimes we've taken the approach with prophecy that we kind of tell you what to believe and what to think on what's happening there, and I think prophecy is a lot better discussed than it is preached. One of the things I love about stories is that when you tell a story and you give people background on the story, it allows them to take that story and personalize it to their life and to what's happening in their world to a certain extent. And it gives people some space to work with and to individualize on their own. And that's one of the reasons I think the Bible uses stories so extensively. It's relatable, and it's also malleable. It allows you to customize it to, okay, well, Daniel did this in this situation. How does that apply to my situation here? What parts do, what parts don't? What can I take away from Daniel's experience that would be like my experience? What's not like Daniel's experience? So that, I think that makes for interesting sermons. And when it comes to prophecy, because I find that in prophecy, there's so many people. When I'm listening to sermons on prophecy, I just want to stop the speaker multiple times and like, okay, but have you thought about this? And what about that? And we'll help.
I want to do that too.
Let's have a discussion here.
I just get lost and go, that doesn't sound right, but what do I know?
And so I think that what we'd like to do next year is, and the other part that I would say is that I think that sometimes prophecy can be on the heavy side. And not everybody is in a place where that's what they need in the moment. And so for me, just to give people the opportunity to decide how deep they want to dive into this, I think it'll be a fun thing to do.
Nice. So would we have maybe something for other people that might not be like?
Yeah, absolutely.
Deep?
No, I think we're going to try to do an in-person version, and we're going to try to do an online version.
Nice. No, that's man. I like the sounds of that. So that's next year?
Yeah, 2025. I think I haven't mapped out how many weeks, but I think we'll probably, I'm thinking it's going to be late spring, summer that we may be looking at, but don't hold me to that. It could be fall too. So I need to look at the schedule and really see what works out. And I also need to kind of figure out how many weeks I think it needs to go.
The year goes by quick.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
So
that we're in Thanksgiving.
So that's the plan right now, to do that for those who are interested in it. And
I think that could be fun.
Yeah.
I think that could. I mean, if you could make prophecy fun, which I'm not saying it could be like fun, happy-go-lucky, but
I think it's super fun. I think it's really fun in a context of having a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And everybody going home, everybody thinking about it, everybody coming back and having further conversation about it. I think that will be very fun. And it's
helpful too.
Yeah, we'll do it whole lifestyle, and I think it's going to be a good thing.
Nice. All right. It's not a week with Matthew as one of our online worship hosts without a question or a comment. So here you go. Ken, Melanie, I'm going to need your take on this. If you were in one of the two positions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Daniel, which would you rather be in, incineration or hangry lion that can eat the whole pack?
Ooh.
So there was a big debate going on during second service. I believe it was Stanley who was like, look, give me the incineration. If it was killing people outside, how long can you last inside? So maybe that's a little bit of a board tilter for me, considering that, I don't know how long you can live while the lions are eating you. I mean, I don't know.
I think I'm going to go with lions because it makes a better story for people who come read it later. and they were ripped apart by lions.
So you think that's a better story than the fiery furnace?
Yes.
That wuss. They just put them in the fire. They got eaten by lions. Come on.
I don't know.
I just couldn't. Matthew, I love you.
Yeah, boy, I don't know. I think
I feel like you need to commit, Ken.
Okay, I'm going to go with the fiery furnace.
All right.
Nice.
Okay.
So we're going for quick, and Melanie's going for legacy. That is.
I think just Melanie knows she's a mouthful for the lion, as opposed to the lion's going to have to chew on me for a minute.
Yeah, we're going to have 2 or 3 on us.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah.
They're going to have one lick and a chomp, and she's going to be gone, and they're still going to be tearing us apart, going, "Get like the fat guy."
It's chicken nuggets versus the whole chicken. So that's
right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that's not. I don't think you're far off. Anonymous.
I don't know. That feels like it must have been politically incorrect somewhere along the way. But, so I apologize to anybody, any chicken nuggets that are offended by this.
Oh goodness.
It's can God use bad leaders to make His presence more abundant to His people?
The Bible seems to think so. Yeah,
I think so. It seems weird though. That's like I think in the where that question came through was, all of these leaders seemingly have their flaws, which we all do, but fairly pronounced flaws. And how does God come out looking on the other end, and after they come into contact with Him? And I think the answer is obviously yes, but it made me think for a little bit before I just immediately answered. Poppy wanted to know, was it fair? Ooh, I hate that word. But was it fair that the children and wives of the opposition research party who deceived the king be thrown in jail, even though it was not their doing?
Would that they had been thrown in jail. They got thrown in the lion's den. Doesn't seem fair to me.
Can you imagine what a big lion's den that would have had to have been?
That's a
lot of people.
I've always wondered if they would, they know where Babylon, obviously you were talking about them excavating the walls. Like, it sounds dumb, but like,
did they find a lion's den?
The lion's den, right? There probably is something like, hey, I wonder what used to be in here.
So this is a super controversial topic because there isn't a ton of evidence that there were this. In fact, there's almost no evidence that there were lions then that were used for the purpose of ridding the kingdom of undesirables or people like that. There is some evidence that I read that the Assyrians would keep lions, but the way that generally it happened back then is they would keep wild animals that they could release so that the kings and the nobles could go hunting them. So if they were going to have a big hunt, they would release this animal. And the lion especially was because it was such a fierce animal. It made for better sport for the kings when they do these hunts and things like that.
And the kings came back with the lion.
So there is evidence that that wild animals were kept, but this is there is outside the book of Daniel. There really is no other historical record that I was. Maybe somebody else is aware of something, but there is no other historical record of this being a way that people are being executed until we get into Roman times, when the Romans were putting Christians in the Colosseums and having them fight wild animals, and then you start seeing it there. But this really wasn't something that the Medes and Persians were known for. So
does it say in the Bible, or did you find? I don't remember the Bible saying that the children and the wives is this a?
Yeah, the Bible says that.
Does it?
Yeah.
The whole family and their families.
It says that Darius had the families, and generally in the Bible, when families are included, it means that the families were complicit in what happened, which it's hard to understand how children are complicit in trying to do something wrong. But it also would be at times that in ancient times, if you wanted to make sure that your enemies didn't come back to haunt your children or grandchildren later, you got rid of the entire family so that there wasn't an avenger left to come back at your family later.
Your family. Well, it probably doesn't. The opposition research, they're good at digging up dirt. They could probably find one more. Okay. Anonymous. I think this was a different anonymous from previous. I believe they were spelled different or capitalized different. Just curious, did God hide from Daniel's opposition any of his sins to keep him safe? If Daniel was human, we have all sinned and fallen short of God's glory, correct? So do you think there was anything? I don't think it says anything about that, but.
Yeah, I think you could have a long conversation about that's fun around a dinner table. I don't know. I think there are those of us who have worked with people that make mistakes. They're not perfect people, but you really couldn't find anything that would be of a significant enough nature.
Ken, you're making me
them.
Blush.
I know. That's why I was looking at you and Randy both, Melanie, just saying that, just both of you. But they're just people that have lived their life in such a way that I'm sure they make mistakes, but there isn't something that you're like kind of fireable that's kind of rises to the level of needing to fire them. And so,
and I think what we talked about earlier, if Daniel makes it through all of these kings and is their right hand, there can't be anything super crazy about his character that would cause someone to really take notice, other than the fact that, wow, this guy's dependable. He always does what he's told. He's been audited 157 times and never found a penny missing, or whatever it is. So I kind of feel like it's just nothing major that they could put their finger on. What did you figure?
Oh no, I was just wondering why he wasn't translated. That would have been a good ending. Okay.
I'm kind of hoping I am.
Chariot of fire.
No, not fire. I think we already did the thing with the fire.
Oh. He didn't. Daniel didn't. So
yeah. I don't know.
I'll take the Harley of fire. As long as it's not.
I hope not. I really actually pray very specifically for you that's not.
As long as it's quick and heaven's not too far up. Oh, shucks.
I think don't you have wings on your Harley?
Sometimes I've been told, but I didn't see any this time. I don't think we hit 60 miles an hour in all 600 and some miles.
Oh, okay.
All right. We're looking for the back road, the twisties, the road untraveled, not interstate or highway or anything like that. So try to keep it off to ourselves. So in today's show notes, you will also find a poem by Ella Wheeler Wilcox on Thanksgiving. I'm not going to read it to you, but I do think it is something to take a moment of your time. And if you're around the table, sometimes people are looking for a little something that just kind of brings everyone to the same place. And it's one of my favorite poems. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in the show notes for you. And next week, what are we doing? I haven't been around for a week.
Origins.
We start our Christmas series that we're calling Origins.
I guess. I always said it's after Thanksgiving, and it will be after Thanksgiving.
It will be.
Week.
Yep.
Crazy, huh?
Even though Gabby convinced me to come in and play
I'm
Christmas.
telling you what, the lobby's looking good.
It is looking good. So for all of those of
good.
you who are listening Wednesday morning or later this week,
thank you to the ones that showed up. And we had probably about 25 or 30 on Monday night, and then tonight we'll see how many show up. But Gabby told me we were probably about 80% of the way through.
Yeah.
So
it's looking really good. And I'll have to say, you missed Alex's Christmas cookies. She had three different kinds of
I think she'll be bringing them back
cookies.
tonight.
Well, yeah, if you're
listening to this now and you weren't here, then you definitely missed out. My bad.
We made some really special Cuban coffee, and we had a good time. There was music playing, and once Sir Albert came to show Randy what the part of the audio system is that he doesn't understand. So, but we made it. So, Christmas series. What else is anything else? I mean, what's the big just if you're planning right now, you're thinking, oh man, it's Thanksgiving, right? You only got 15, 20 days till Christmas shopping is over or something like that. All right, give me a break. I haven't started.
Yeah. Well, here's something to look forward to. December 14th is our big Christmas program.
Right.
There you go.
Because we do it a little bit different here. So if you're new and you haven't, you're like, hey, I'm going to come on Christmas. And then I will say, do you know what, off the top of your head, Melanie, what evening?
December 24, Christmas Eve.
Yeah, Christmas Eve. That's Tuesday. So we can let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. We're December.
Wow, thanks for letting me down. He's like, you mean Christmas Eve? Is that the one you're talking about, Randy? I just couldn't get it out.
The one that happens on December 24th every year?
Was that the one?
Right. Thank you for that. Okay, so December 7th, which is a week from Saturday, we are going to have Christmas carolers.
Oh, is that our carolers this year?
Yeah, so that's going to be really fun. And we are going to debut our children's choir is going to perform a song for us, so that is going to be super cool. So December 7. December 14, we have our big Christmas program. December 21, we only have one service, and that's going to be our second service that starts at noon. But before that, we are having a Christmas brunch.
It's one of my favorite things.
That is one of my favorite things. That's a fairly new tradition here at Whole Life, but it's one I love.
There's going to be live music with, strings and Christmas carols. It's going to be really fun. And then Tuesday, December 24th, we are having our candlelight Christmas, our Christmas communion, Christmas Eve communion.
And I'm just going to tell you that's the one you just shouldn't. I mean, Melanie and team and us. I mean, we've all been working hard for getting Christmas, getting music and visuals and all the things that go into worship, but.
It's a very nice tradition.
Yeah,
for me, Christmas Eve communion is one of my favorite things to attend. Hands down.
If you want to participate in the rite of foot washing, that's going to be available starting at 5:00, and then the program itself will start at 6
for Christmas Eve. See, that's perfect. Then you throw the troops in the back of the pickup truck, and you go looking at lights with a hot beverage in their hand if it's cold.
Wow, I'm going home with the McGrays.
Yeah, I mean, we can leave. We make a nice little trek through Winter Park where all the lights are, and we've got a couple places.
Maybe you'll have to put a map in the show notes of Randy's suggested path of.
There's probably a couple, and I think there's actually one. I think last year, Wesh 2 did one, so I'll take one up and we'll put it in the show notes because that's one of our. I mean, my girls, that's to put the lawn chairs in the back of the truck and some bean bags and some blankets, and away you go. So there you have it.
Nice.
Put a little Daddy Pumps Christmas music. Well, not last year. There was no radio in last year's truck. This year, I'm anticipating.
Santa came to town.
Santa came early for Dad this year. I got nothing else, and I'm happy for it. So, I think that's it. That's a good list of things. I will go ahead
And
and
then there's the end of the year reflections South.
And you really don't want to miss that
You
because
really don't.
you are going to
It's
go
a
home
walk
with
down
something
memory
special.
lane.
There's going to be there's memory lane, but there's also we're going to be giving away. Should we just tell them or?
I mean, we could.
Do I know this?
I think it's like just a special for people listening to the podcast all the way to the end.
That's it. All the way to the end. We're not even at an hour yet. So go ahead.
Yeah. So what we've been doing over the last couple of years is on the first Sabbath of the New Year, been kind of giving out theme T-shirts.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so we've been giving out theme T-shirts, but we decided this year we're going to give them out on the last Sabbath of the year, and then encourage people to wear them to church the next Sabbath for the first Sabbath. So everybody's wearing, a lot of people, and we'll still, if there are T-shirts left, there'll be T-shirts to give away on that first Sabbath of the New Year too, as supplies last. But we'll be trying to give them away on that last Sabbath, and that way, like I said, we just come to church wearing the new theme for the new year, and there's a lot of exciting stuff happening on that first Sabbath of the new year because we have just a really fun theme, and we are going to do some fun things to kind of launch it on that first Sabbath.
And just keep in mind, between first and second service, that's about 750 people on average, maybe this time. Of course, our big program will be over. People might be traveling. It might not be quite that much. But usually this time of year, it's packed. So make your preps to come early and come to first service. It's just as good as second most times.
All the time.
All the time, Randy.
Some people even say it's better.
Oh, well, you've got fresh Ken out of the gate, and so that, do you like fresh Ken or do you like leftover Ken? It depends, because sometimes
it's a hard one.
Because sometimes that turkey sandwich left over is better than when you had it at the table. I'm just saying, what's your preference? But come to first too, and make sure that you get a place. And we do have, I hate to say it, but we do have overflow.
Now
seating,
we're back to talking about people as
things.
Foul. So
yeah. see.
Now,
full circle of life.
Give us grace. We didn't mean to. It's just that broad brush.
Have you had lunch?
No.
Yeah, there we go.
No, it is 3:39. I have not had lunch, but I had it was 9:30, I guess, when I had breakfast. So,
all right.
Anyway, all right, guys, that is going to do it. Happy Thanksgiving. Don't forget, swipe up in today's show notes, and you'll have something you can share with your dinner table other than politics or something else that might be uncomfortable.
Please.
And a nice poem to start everybody off. It really is. It's a good poem. So.
Remember, people, love your neighbor.
That's right.
Love all your neighbors.
And this is a gratitude gift, an early Christmas gift from the podcast to you. So use it wisely. That's going to do it for this week. Thanks for listening, and just have an amazing Thanksgiving.